I understood what my purpose was, which is kind of help people help themselves and find their wholeness, whether they, because we're all whole inside, even if we don't know it, it's there. Um, and so, yeah, and that happened in a moment for me. It was another moment. The universe kind of sent me this download or information or understanding. I don't know, however you want to, people call it awakening, they call it a lot of things.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome John Laywer. John's story is very unique. Their transition from a warrior in Kuwait, Baghdad, and Kandahar over many years to a spiritualist and universalist is a powerful narrative. John was a counterintelligence special agent when he was in the Army and also an asymmetric warfare specialist responsible for coordinating various operations for a special USAF unit in Afghanistan, for 6 years. John went from receiving a Bronze Star for counterterrorism operations to walking through a swamp of sadness to an amazing path of spiritual healing and awareness. John acts as one of the several guides for Kishar, a nonprofit online spiritual community for people to share their journey and explore their own unique spiritual path. John is an omnist and believes in the validity of great human thought from around the world and across time. He offers individual spiritual guidance and coaching services as part of the Kishar spiritual community. I'd like to welcome you to the show, John. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thanks, Dwight. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I appreciate that great introduction.
You're welcome. And I apologize if I pronounced anything incorrectly. I have a website I use called it's pronounced.com. A lot of people aren't aware it even exists. And you put in stuff, and I've stopped using it recently because it'll give you 5, 6 different ways. Well, I never know which one to pick. So I apologize. I normally ask people, but
okay.
Hopefully I
All
was
right.
close enough that people will
You're
understand it.
close.
And obviously you're going to pronounce it the right way, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So, John, one of the things that I focus on, and we talked about it before I record, is a person's origin story because it helps us connect. It creates an immediate connection and helps people be able to appreciate anything that you're going to talk about in regards to what you have gone through, since adulthood to where you are today. So, if you could do me a favor, share your origin story from your earliest recollections to adulthood to led you to where you're at today, and share whatever you feel comfortable with. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always nice to be able to talk about our beginnings. Uh, I grew up in a small town in central rural Oklahoma, about 8,000 people. Mom and dad and a sister, so typical American family, I guess. We lived in the town, but our family had a shared farm outside of town where I would spend weekends and afternoons sometimes. So I also had that kind of upbringing on a farm, barefoot, running through the woods and swimming in ponds and lakes and that kind of thing, fishing. Uh, I had a great childhood, especially in my developmental years, those younger years. I was loved and read to, and I read a lot. And uh, my parents took really good care of me. My extended family was very rich and fulfilling. My small town that I lived in, it was a boom town in the 1920s, and then there was an oil boom in the 80s as well in Oklahoma. And so life was good for everybody, most people. And then the oil boom, there was an oil bust, and so the bottom fell out, and the company started to leave. Halliburton, Exxon, everybody. So the tax base dried up. Town started to not have a tax base, started to kind of die, and so my childhood kind of went from this very warm, rich uh thing and kind of morphed in my kind of middle school years into this more um the town wasn't as wholesome. The My parents started to have difficulties with one another, money problems around the house, and so that kind of informed, you know from my developmental years into my teenage years, started to become more difficult from a home environment. The town was kind of dying around me, and I was kind of watching this kind of like as a spectator, and as a participant. And I think that was difficult. It's hard to watch your town die. I think that was really something that impacted me. I don't talk about it very often. Um, and I wasn't really into high school. I never really liked school. Uh, I was educated. My parents made sure that I was educated. I didn't get the best grades. My sister was valedictorian, cheerleader, tennis player. She went to Smith College, all that stuff. So she was the valedictorian educated one in the family, but I didn't follow that. She was older than me. I didn't follow that path. I think much to the chagrin of my parents at first. Um, but I was kind of a free spirit. I was kind of a life is too important to be taken seriously, Oscar Wilde kind of thing. And um, I really lived that life. I enjoyed life. There were hard times. I had to get through some stuff with my parents splitting up and getting divorced, and that was hard. And then my dad lost his auto parts business that he'd had for 30 years. And he went to he could have gone and gotten a corporate job. He was an educated man, but he decided to go be a trucker. So I uh I lived on my own for the last couple of years of high school. He would send me money. I'd take care of the house. I'd take care of my grandparents at their place every now and then. So I just lived by myself for 2 years. I mean, I had friends and took care of things. So I was very responsible kind of at a younger age. I was always kind of an old soul. And I knew I wasn't, I knew as when I was in high school, I was like, I don't think college is for me. I don't think that if I went to college, I would ever go to class. So, um, and for me as a kid, I was a bit awkward. I had friends, but I never really fit in. And uh, school was very difficult for me. I didn't like going to school. And my, when I was a freshman in high school, though, I had this like it wasn't a spiritual thing for me at the time, but I had this realization of like how to deal with people, and that kindness was this important thing, and that if I led with kindness, I'd have this easier path in the world. And so from that point on, I was just nicer to people. I was less guarded. I'd kind of been bullied a little bit. Um, and that really changed my whole life as from a social perspective in high school. So from my freshman year on, I just kind of understood how to deal with people, and it made it so much easier, it made my life easier. So um that was kind of the first moment that I think the universe kind of reached out and spoke to me. Um was that so that was probably the biggest thing that happened to me in my youth, is learning. It was like this sudden knowledge of like how to deal with people and how to live in the world and be kind. And I've carried that with me from that point. So that was really important for me.
No, it would be. I was reading that about you, and I actually have that in my prep here about kindness. And since you brought it up, obviously I want to talk about some of the other things. So we're going to talk about the kindness aspect shortly here. I just want to touch on a little bit of what you brought up, living in that rural community. I grew up in a rural community, 10,000 people. My dad owned a farm equipment dealership, right? So I dealt with farmers in the rural community. He was one of 18 kids. My mom was one of nine. So a lot of farmers in our
Oh, wow.
family. Loved it, right? Loved it. But, I went through the challenges, not necessarily the same as you, but Alberta, where I live in Canada, is an oil province where we're considered the Texas of the US, like
Right.
pardon me, of Canada. And we've had our boom and busts, and I've watched, small communities around the province, which is for those listening in the US, it's the same as this state, dwindle because of the oil and gas industry, because that happens when you focus on one industry. And it is sad because I looked at it how it affects some of my relatives that lived in the smaller communities. Their houses went to a point where they weren't worth nothing. Nobody would buy it because there was no reason to even move there. There was no industry, there was no real jobs. Tax base is eroded, like you said, and you can't afford things. And you mentioned that it caused issues in your family. I've seen and talked to people where it's done it. I've seen the impact of what, like you said, it impacted you watching the town literally dwindle and die, right? And become not the place that you were used to. Well, that's got to affect a person 6 inches between their ears. Like you mentioned about your mom and dad and how it affected them, and your dad lost his business. And what an evolution, though. You start out being that close knit, extended family, everything's fantastic. You got all this stuff going on. You're a reader, you're enjoying the real community, to go all of a sudden to where you're staying by yourself and dad's sending you money. So if I'm to interpret what you said properly, you were living with your dad then. Your
Yeah.
dad is who you decided after the divorce to stay with.
Well, I stayed with my mom at first, but I couldn't live with my mother. She was like, I can't handle you. Like you, I wouldn't go to school, and I, I pretty much did whatever I wanted to do, which I was kind of raised to be a free spirit in a lot of ways. I couldn't live with mom. There wasn't any, it just couldn't work at the time. So yeah, I ended up living
Well,
with my dad.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, and I like how you put dad lost the auto business and he, instead of doing something else professionally, goes and becomes a trucker. Wow.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot. Like I have a friend of mine, very successful. Things didn't work out at the end, like initially successful, ended up going and becoming a trucker. My one uncle, in order to keep his farm afloat, he started trucking for years. He doesn't anymore. He's in his 70s, but it seems to be a stable staple, pardon me, job for people to fall back on, because it is something that allows. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize, trucking is an escapism for a lot of people,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're
right?
talking about a guy, he used to work for a Bendix. He was a regional sales director for Bendix, which was like a Fortune 50 company back in the 70s. And um so he had the education and training to go do whatever, but he just it was escapism, I think.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to be negative. It's just a reality
No,
that
I think,
I'm trying to educate people that there's a reason
absolutely.
people do certain types of jobs. There's a reason people in the energy industry here go and leave, and they'll work 3 weeks out and get back for a week with their family.
Yeah.
And divorce rates are higher in industries where we have trades like this, where they're expected to work 14, 21 days. They get a few off and then they're back, or massive shift differentials and stuff like that. It causes they get to a point where they're happy doing it because they don't like to deal with what's going on at home. Then they get to a point where maybe they lose their job because there's the oil bust for a short period of time in our province. It happens. And then all of a sudden they're home all the time. Well, wife don't like it, husband don't like it, or sometimes it's the opposite.
Yeah.
I have quite a few women I know that work in the trades as well, and it causes problems. And then the next thing that happens is divorce, or they go to retire. The retirement numbers, like their divorce rates in retirement, are unbelievable for people that worked away from the home all the time. Now all of a sudden they're home, right? Routine for the
Yeah.
person that was left behind is shattered. They're not used to the routine, trying to figure out their lives. Next thing you know, divorce wall, poop, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it,
People get set in those routines, those habits.
yeah. So again, I'm not saying that's to. I just want people that are listening or watching to think. If you're one of those people that are driving and you're listening to my podcast, right? Your core values, in my opinion, should not be work first, right? Unfortunately, we need money to survive, but maybe you can do something to change your life, to get a different type of job. Again, a lady I interviewed yesterday, that's her whole thing, is teaching people how to level up and go up so they can change their income status or their circumstance that's affecting family or life or their like personally or even extended, right? So it's never to hurt, it's just to make people aware, right? Self-awareness sometimes happens by people hearing something they've never heard or hearing it from somebody different.
Yes. Yeah, that's why you hear like teachers, like great teachers, like whether it's Buddha or Jesus Christ, say the same thing in so many different ways because you never know what's going to resonate with someone.
Well, and you listen like you listen to the teachings of Buddha or Jesus Christ or Muhammad or whatever, right? Doesn't matter what organized
Yeah.
religion or non-organized religion or spirituality, their words were based on a different time too. So the
Yeah.
interpretation, I've heard stuff because I'm a Christian, right? And I wear it proudly because that's who I am. That's part of my
Sure.
identity. Is it my everything? Do I live my life that way? I use it as a guiding force, but I don't necessarily, um, drink the Kool-Aid kind of person where I I just literally live it like a buffet. I take what I like, I leave what I don't when it comes to spirituality and organized religion. But their words can be very confusing. I like how you put that. They'll say things in multiple different ways, and people just, I'll get people. Will listen. Like I go to church on Sunday, and I'm one of the ushers, and we'll be listening, and people will say, "Oh, the priest or the deacon said this in a homily," and they'll interpret something completely different. I'm in planet Earth, they're in planet Pluto, or or vice versa, because it might be me that. But at the end of the day, we're all creatures. That's why Jesus and Buddha, like you said things a different way. They're trying to make people like, "Hello, wake up."
Yeah.
Problem is most people never ever hear the wonderful words of Buddha or Jesus Christ because they both were about the human condition,
Yeah,
elevation of the
absolutely.
human condition and changing and helping people. But if you never listen to it or read it, right,
You
you
miss
only
it.
can get, yeah, it's just like my podcast. This podcast, for those listening and watching, you already know it's fantastic, don't you?
I do.
So at the end of the day, the people that aren't listening to it, just like not listening to Jesus or Buddha, right? They're not hearing it because they're not plugged in. But we're going to change that, aren't we, John?
We
we're
will.
gonna we're gonna bring people to drink the Kool-Aid of my podcast. Anyway,
I like it.
I'm being a smart aleck. So I like the fact that you were an awkward kid, a difficult kid. I went through that. I had health issues with bully, but when I hit high school, I became kind of rebellious. I was awkward, trying to find my place in this world. And again, they don't teach things in school that help us elevate our mindset or help us with that angst or those thoughts that we don't know how to process because our brain's still trying to develop. But I like the fact one of the things I loved reading about when I read yesterday, and I was reading because you sent me that booklet or whatever, like 2-3 page complete biography. I read that and I was researching you through the Podmatch site and I was looking at some of your social stuff. But one of the things that stood out the most was kindness. And we always hear that kill them with kindness. Do people even understand what that means? It's not meant to be a manipulative thing. It's meant to be literally just like we can have a nutritional lifestyle of eating meat and potatoes or being vegetarian or vegan or whatever the case may be, or keto or whatever you live. Kindness is a way of life. It is something that comes natural. Like my mother, my goodness, it comes natural. She wakes up, she's kind. She goes to bed, she's kind. It's my whole life, she was just the kindest person. That learned me the behavior to want to be kind. My dad, super great, super good entrepreneur, professional, but very blunt. So I got the best of both worlds. I got that kindness, but I also got the edge. That makes sense.
Sure.
So I really appreciated the fact. So I'd like to touch on that kindness. So you said I was around middle school, correct? When that hit you?
Yeah, I was actually sitting in class my freshman year in middle school, high school. Yeah, that's when it happened.
So what was it something that somebody said in a conversation, something a teacher said? What is it, epiphany and just the light bulb went off? Do you remember exactly
It
that moment?
it just clicked. It wasn't epiphany. It was just something just clicked, and I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I had always been pretty kind and pretty friendly. But it was I don't know, it was just a different way of living it and being able to show other people that it exists and inside of me and from me to them and all that.
Was it a complete elevation change in your emotions at that time?
Yeah,
Like,
it did change. Yeah, it changed. It definitely changed who I was. Um, I mean, I was still the same person, but it changed how I moved through the world.
so how you presented yourself and what
Yeah, for
people,
sure. Yeah,
so, and it's kind of weird. I think to myself, here's John, and this kindness epiphany hits him, and your aura changed. Like, people don't
yeah,
think that we have an aura. I believe we do. I believe we
yeah,
exude
yeah.
energy. We can exude energy all day long. And if we were taught, again, back in school, how to read people's body language and listen
Yes,
to their tonality and listening to, just how they communicate, we would get along so much better because we'd know when not to talk. We'd know
yeah.
when to talk, right?
It's an openness. Yeah, I think people sense that. And then I think people become, I found that people were attracted to it because because suddenly you're able to have conversations and talk, but yeah, you're able to listen. And suddenly when listening is this kind thing because people want to be
Oh,
heard, you know?
you might be the best thing that happened in their day, right?
Exactly.
And people don't realize that just by somebody. And that's another thing. Like, we talked about, um, one of the guests I had on, we talked about that generic, shallow, how are you, John? And
Yeah.
reality, I don't care because
Yeah.
I've not developed that kindness aspect. But you can tell when people ask when they're genuinely want to know, right? Or, you don't even have to use those words. How are you? Brother John, it's been a while since I've seen you. You look good. What's new and improved for you? Right?
Right.
Instead of using that mechanical, how are you, when in reality their brain shut off as soon as they said it. Anything you said, they're not listening anyway. And it's
Right.
not because they aren't necessarily kind people. They haven't learned to enact kindness in their daily routines. From
Yes. Yeah.
dealing with that retail person saying, you know what, thank you, waiter, waitress, thanks for the great service. And you see them light up, and because they don't hear that a lot. Or somebody in a store selling you something. Thanks so much. Appreciate you working. It's like -40 out. I can't believe this, but I appreciate you coming to work so that I can come purchase it. I said that to somebody in the last couple months during the Christmas season, and they were just like, "What?" My kids used to ask me when I was little, because I'd always practice it around them being kind to others and giving genuine compliments. They'd go, "Dad, why did you say that to that person when we get out in the vehicle?" "Oh, because I meant it." You like that their necklace there girl was wearing, or you like the tie that person was wearing, or the shirt, or their smile? Like, you've said all this stuff, like you've told people they have a great smile. I said, yeah. Is there any times that you've heard Dad not say anything? Yep. Do you want to know why? Why? Because there was nothing genuine to say. Being phony doesn't help anybody. That's not
Right.
kindness, right? But sometimes kindness can come in different ways, and I can see somebody's very upset, and I want to help them get out of their funk, right? So then I want to be that kind person, but sometimes you don't know what to say. You don't always have to say something, right? Kindness can be
Yeah.
just listening to that person vent and walking away.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about kind of like being open to it and then suddenly good things happen.
Absolutely. So we're going to move on from that. Thank you for the great origin. John, your biggest battles started out on the battlefields of war, which you spent many years from 2000 to 2015. It left you and your wife with grappling depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Can you explain the journey from 2015 that led you in September 2001, a moment of clarity and understanding that set you on the path that you are today? What happened in that period of time?
Yeah, that's those 7 years after I got home, my wife and I got home from Afghanistan. I was lost. Like when I came home from war, um, my whole identity was wrapped up in being that person who had been good at his job and been completely dedicated to his job and done really interesting things and really what I thought were important things. Um, and so I didn't know who I was outside of war. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't, the world was kind of gray because I had been through this trauma, and my brain had been, it wasn't just a mental thing, but my brain had been rewired to be uh, in the presence of all this adrenaline and excitement all the time. And, helicopters, planes, making decisions that were life or death decisions all the time. And suddenly I'm back in this in the US now at home, and I was like I said, I was just completely lost, and I didn't really know where to start or how to heal, or what any of that kind of looked like. So it was this just wandering phase of my life.
Yeah, and I've known quite a few people. I have a good friend of mine that lives down in Montana that went through the spoils, or because really it's not war is not a good thing. At
No.
the end of the day, you're giving a service and you're helping out, but he went through some massive trauma. And he's in his late 60s now, and he's really never recovered. He's gotten somewhat better since he's associated with a group of people of us that have helped him feel better about himself. But sometimes it's such a grappling pressure on your shoulders that it's almost unbearable if you're not completely plugged into something. And you plugged into spirituality, which helped you out. And for those listening, yes, I'm a Christian, whatever. You can call yourself a tree hugger. I don't care. As long as you're kind and you follow, I tell people, if you ever want to look up some great rules, you might want to take a few of them out, because if you don't believe in God, you're not going to put God before everybody else if you're looking at the 10 Commandments. But there's some good rules in the 10 Commandments. If you can live with kindness and follow some of the rules of the 10 Commandments, you're going to live a great life, and people around you are going to love you. And I don't care if you call yourself, like I said, you can be spiritual, you could be a tree hugger, you could worship the stars. Just follow some principles of being a good human being. So the next thing I'd like to know, though, so during your time in the desert, what did you learn that helped you get to that spiritual path that has helped you stay grounded? And I'm not saying it's perfect. Nobody's perfect. We all have our struggles, especially somebody such as you that spent that many years in a war environment where you've seen so much tragedy and inflicted tragedy as well. Like, let's be
Yeah.
real, there's both sides of the coin. How did the desert help you on your spiritual path?
Well, I think being part of this giant machine, the Western military industrial complex. Yeah, when I was young, I was an idealistic kid. I wanted to change the world, help the world, and I thought I was doing the right thing and believed in the mission and all that. And the longer you're part of this machine, you start to see, oh, well, there's this very human thing. It's not just me, the U.S. soldier or Western soldier, and then the enemy. What is the enemy, right? They're just humans, and you start to see that over time because, yeah, we're making decisions that says go capture this guy or go drop a bomb right here, right now, on this guy. And suddenly you realize these people are just trying to live their lives and put food on the plate for their family, and believe in whatever they believe in and do whatever they do. And then there's the civilians in the middle that are just innocent third parties completely, these innocent things. And you see the toll it takes on everybody, the enemy, the civilians in the middle, ourselves. There's this real toll that it takes on all of us, and this machine kind of eats us up. And for me, that being part of that darkness, and like you said, I was part of tragedy, and on the receiving end of tragedy, I kind of exported tragedy to others as part of the machine. And so it's this dark thing. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that when you see all this darkness and you kind of stare into the abyss, it gives you a great contrast to the light. Suddenly you're like, oh, there's this light over here. And that's this beautiful thing. And it's shown me, I think it showed me that there's great balance in the universe and the world. And maybe we're the gray that walks the line in between light and darkness, but we get to choose if we focus on the dark or if we focus on the light. And I don't
Wow,
think,
I love
I don't
that.
think I
I
could
love
do
that.
that if it hadn't been for that.
I love that, though. That folks, yeah, the gray. That is very profound. And I never thought about it that way. Like you think people listening, watching, like honestly, I can't even imagine because I've never gone to war. I do know a lot of people. I have friends, even I have a friend that her husband's still recovering from brain injury. I think it was close to 20 years ago. They live in Florida now. He used to live in New York State. And just the PTSD and the emotional stuff, the dreams and just everything that people go through. You may see it on television or you hear about it, but you'll never be able to relate to it, right? We can have our own traumas. We can have our own PTSD from maybe from childhood violence or, whatever the case may be. But the level that you had to go through, as you articulated, you were the deliverer of it and the receiver of it. So that spirituality that you learned, that light at the end of the tunnel, was something that is give you an opportunity to not live in that darkness always. I'm not saying you still don't, because you might. I don't have a clue. I don't know your circumstances, but having that spiritual light has definitely been a guiding force for you.
Yeah, and it's been something that I wasn't on. I think we're always on a journey, whether we know it or not, first of all, but I didn't know I was on a journey. And then so finally, yeah, over 2 years ago now, uh, you talked about it briefly there earlier that I kind of had this moment of understanding or clarity where I kind of understood the universe and the oneness of everything. We're all connected. It was very warm, very loving, kind of thing. I understood what my purpose was, which is kind of help people help themselves and find their wholeness, whether they, because we're all whole inside, even if we don't know it, it's there. Um, and so, yeah, and that happened in a moment for me. It was another moment. The universe kind of sent me this download or information or understanding. I don't know, however you want. People call it awakening. They call it a lot of things, but
Yeah, and then some
um,
people might say it's God speaking to you, and
sure,
it don't
absolutely,
matter.
absolutely.
It don't matter how you get the message. If the
Hmm.
message is a spiritual awakening and you can feel whole somewhat inside more than you ever have, and now you're going out and serving others because you found your purpose, you're living a purposeful life. Doesn't mean purposeful life. People listening, like, my book is How to Live Life on Purpose, Not by Accident. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden I've lost the valley of despair, that I don't have those moments of, quiet desperation. It means that I have a template between my 6 inches and I live that life to be purposeful. And that purpose is to serve others so they don't have to go through the trials and tribulations I have. And now I don't know if your biggest clientele are people that that are in the military, but I imagine there's people of all forms of walks of lives
Yeah.
that because you have that purpose now, you're serving and making a difference. And as every person you make a difference, that gives you one step closer, if I'm incorrect, please tell me, toward the light, toward that more joyful bliss.
Yeah, and you nailed it there at the end right there with that light, but calling it joy, and that's it. It's that finding that peace and then be able to experience the joy of it. I think, and that's all I want to do is like that's there for everyone. They just have to be able to find it themselves, right? And they have to want to find it. And yeah, I've helped some military people. Most of the people that we work with are just normal people. No, all traumas are different. No trauma is going to be the
Oh,
same. So
absolutely.
we don't have to compare it. So yeah, and it can be, it doesn't matter if you're a driven professional or if you're a stay-at-home parent or anything in between. Having that alignment in mind, body, soul, regardless of whatever your belief is, it doesn't really, for me, I'm a universalist, right? So like whatever you believe in, having that alignment in these aspects of your life are gonna make you a happier person. It's gonna make you a more peaceful person, a more calm person.
Yeah, of course it would. And I like how you talked about comparison. How many people live the comparison game every single
Oh God.
moment of their day? They're comparing, somebody else share with them something they've gone through. It could be joyful, it could be sad, it could be tragedy. And oh, I went through this, and that. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation. And John says something, and then I interjected, "Oh, yeah, I understand. I empathize with you. This is what I've experienced." It's the delivery. People don't know how to deliver things where they can share their pain too. Their body language and their, wow, I've gone through, you know what I mean? It becomes that comparison game and they just stay angry and bitter. I know myself, my tribe of people that are like that aren't part of my tribe of people. they're
Right.
they're gone or they're never allowed in, right? Because really, wouldn't you say now that you've gotten to this place, you have to be very careful of your associations and what you listen to, watch, and who you hang out with to protect what you've gained?
Oh, I love that because we are what we spend time doing and who we spend time with. So who we choose to let in that inner circle of our kind of nuclear existence is it's going to change who we are. And we've got to be really intentional about who those people are and make sure they're lifting us up. And yeah, we'll lift them up because that's we're going to lift them up because we're lifting ourselves up and we have self-love. So we're kind to ourselves, we love ourselves, we're going to lift them up, but we need them to lift up. There's that, reciprocity I think we talked about before we came
Yeah,
on here. And
yeah.
it's the idea of reciprocity that this is a two-way street. And it's that golden rule. Like it's in every religion, it's in every spiritual philosophy, it's in every, thinking philosophy that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that's written in verse and chapter in Hinduism and Buddhism
Oh
and
yeah,
and
Christianity. Yeah,
all of them, right? It's and yeah, and I know it from the Bible from growing up Southern Baptist, but um uh
the universal truth that people don't acknowledge, right?
yeah.
Do
Yeah,
unto others and just be kind, right? Just be a good human being. And one thing I would add, if you are kind and you're a good human being and you're uplifting and you're having a purposeful life, quit having that mindset, what's in it for me or what am I getting back
yeah,
by doing this? If you do the right things, the universe, if you're universal, how do you pronounce that? Universalist or whatever you were saying.
yeah,
If it doesn't matter what you are, quit expecting things back. Just do the right things. I honestly believe the universe, God, Buddha, whatever thing that you believe in, the world's going to come back and give you what you need. Does it mean you're going to be a multimillionaire? Possibly not, probably not. But it means that you're going to be taken care of, right? And it starts by having gratitude for what you currently have and build on that, right? So quit doing the comparison game was my whole point. Just live your life. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to what you look in the mirror. Do you feel better today than you did yesterday? If not, what can you do to up your game, to quit being camped in your mindset and climb again? So one of the things that I wanted to, and how do you pronounce it? Is it Kishar?
it's we call it Kishar. Yeah.
Kishar. I apologize, listeners.
No, it's okay.
I admitted I didn't pronounce it right. So Kishar. So you went from soldier to spiritual seeker over a period of time and became part of the Kishar spiritual community. Tell us the origin of that name and about the community itself.
Sure. The origin of the name is it's the Sumerian goddess of Mother Earth or like Gaia. And it also has a dual meaning. It represents the line on the horizon, which we kind of thought beautifully encapsulates that journey we're all kind of on. And it was founded by myself, my wife, who'd been we'd spent we've been married for 20 years and we spent a lot of time at war together doing the same job. And another friend of ours that we had met in Afghanistan, she's also a co-founder. And we wanted to create a place. We thought that there's still space in the digital era to have authentic, meaningful connection, and create a nonprofit online community where people could connect with one another, share their journeys, regardless of faith. Like, could be Christian, could be Buddhist, could be Hindu. It doesn't matter, and we could still have conversations and practice our individual beliefs right alongside one another, ask great questions and seek better answers, and be open-minded. And um, people can help kind of each other figure out if someone's new and wants to figure out spirituality and what that means for them. Then there's resources for that to happen, and that was kind of the impetus that kind of led to the creation of Kishar.
What a great thing. Like unbelievably great because, there's so many people that are literally lost in their lives. They're living on a hamster wheel. They go to work, go home, get paid. They have no connection to a community of kind people that aren't going to judge them for saying that they're agnostic or they're atheist or they're spiritual or whatever. They just acceptance is the start to everybody's journey of feeling enlightenment and happiness and joy. People say to me, well, all I want to be is happy. Okay, what are you doing to be happy? It's not going to drop on your lap. Oh, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have positive thoughts and I'm going to be wealthy. Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
think myself into happiness and think myself into wealth. Yeah, I don't work that way. Now that
Yeah.
can help your positive mindset, but you got to take some action to do something. So somebody that's struggling can reach out to you, become part of your community, and that'll be the first actionable baby step they can take to feeling like part of something without being judged or labeled. Like I love that. Like
Yeah.
congratulations to your wife and you and your other partner. What was it like creating that? What were there hills and valleys? Did
Yeah,
you
it was
struggle to
difficult.
create this? Would you
You
mind
know, when
sharing
I,
that?
yeah, 2 years ago when we kind of had when I had this moment, I told my wife and she's like, "Yeah, this is great. Let's do it." And I told myself, I had this thought about like we often have thoughts that we want to change our life and we tell ourselves late at night, "Hey, the next morning I'm going to do this. I'm going to change. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to go get a different job. I'm going to change my life tomorrow." And then the next morning happens and that moment's gone. And I told myself, don't let that moment pass. And I said, do something every single day to make this happen. And whether it's just 5 minutes or 12 hours, make it happen. And so I did. I worked every day. My wife helped me, our friend helped us. And it was an incredibly fulfilling journey to make it happen, but it was also difficult. There's technical challenges. As you know, you run a podcast, there's creative challenges, the content, and we created a YouTube channel that kind of accompanies the community separately, but it's kind of part of it. And
Yeah, I
so we're,
checked it out last night. Yeah, I actually
yeah.
subscribed to it. So yeah,
Oh, thank
that's
you.
awesome. Oh, of course.
Yeah. So it's all this stuff, right? It's these administrative stuff. You got to get your registration with the state and all the, there's all the stuff that comes along with doing something like this. So it's been a wild ride. I mean, up to and including just trying to go and talk to people about it, like coming on your podcast and having a conversation and saying, if this interests you, great. If not, that's okay too.
So is it for your wife? Obviously, you can't speak for her, but you probably have had conversations. Has it been a great thing the last 2 years for helping you also heal and continue to grow mentally and emotionally?
Yeah, she's always been kind of on a spiritual path more than me. She always had kind of a spiritual center. Um, and so she was kind of happy to see me where I kind of develop into it. And since we've had a very similar journey as far as like pain and suffering and the trauma and healing, it was a very we've spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week together for 20 years almost. And a couple of exceptions to that. We spent two or 3 years apart mixed in there when we were at
Well,
different
you
countries.
you
But
guys you guys met in the military, though, in another country, correct?
yeah, we
I,
met. Yeah,
I
we
met
were
I
in
read
our
something about it.
yeah, we got married in Kuwait. Our wedding certificate was in
Okay.
Arabic. Yeah, yeah. We were both in
Yeah,
the same we were in the same unit. So
okay. And
um
that's how you met. So, and it's evolved through this period of time. And as you mentioned, you were apart for a few years. That must have been difficult too, though.
yeah, we spent our first year of marriage apart. The army, in its infinite wisdom, decided that they would keep me in Kuwait and send her home, even though she volunteered to stay. And a bunch of people didn't want to stay. They kept other people. So, the army did what the army does. So yeah, we spent our first year of our marriage apart.
The wheels of logic aren't always the wheels of logic.
Not always.
I appreciate you sharing that, brother. Like honestly, and I did read that you guys were a year apart, and it's nice to understand more details about it because again, anything I read that you sent me or I go and research is at a superficial level. It only
Right.
tells us so much. So it's so nice to have you on and learn more about you and be able to share your journey and give people the opportunity to grow outside of themselves and have opportunity to feel welcome in a community that is not judgmental, right? That just
Right.
blows my mind that it's only been 2 years and you've developed and got to this point, especially with all the stuff that you went through, the trials and tribulations in your life. And I'm not saying you haven't had some good stuff go on. Obviously, we all have,
Sure.
but sometimes it gets overshadowed by all the negativity and stuff. So, you know, congratulations in doing this to help out other people in the world, right? You don't know who you're going to touch. I don't know other people that listen to my podcast who I touch. I don't know who listens to some of my social stuff that I post of videos or whatever. I don't know. But if it makes a difference in their day, good. That's what I feed off of. I feed off the fact I'm looking to change and uplift the one. And if that
Right.
one can bring along some people for the ride, even better, right? So,
Absolutely.
so I appreciate you sharing. So, I'm curious about, because we have touched a little bit. We talked about Buddhism, you talked about Jesus Christ, you talked about, like Christianity itself, and there's that spirituality and different things. What do you feel is the difference then, like specifically between spirituality, art, science, philosophy, religion, and self-help? Explain what your
For
thought process.
for me, those are all I see them as all almost the same thing. These very overlapping circles that are almost one circle. Because you know, it's all about how we see the world and how we understand the world. And I think religion and art, spirituality, science, philosophy, that's it's all helping us understand what this is all about, who we are, what this, and answer those questions that are these deep questions that I think are meaningful to us. And if we can kind of recognize that those things are also similar, then we can become closer to one another. 'Cause it's like we have if I have 90% things in common with my neighbor, or some other person that I meet on the street, we want happy, healthy children, healthy communities. We want safety and security. We all want the same things. And so why focus on that 10% we don't agree on? Because we have all this overlap. I think that's the message is that regardless of your belief, regardless of your philosophy, regardless of your worldview, we have so much in common.
We're connected. That human condition where we stop labeling and differentiating ourselves intentionally to live in fear or anger or sadness. It needs to stop. So again, people can label themselves whatever they want. They can follow whatever they want, but if they're kind and we can connect to them and we have that 90% similarity and there's 10% difference, that's a pretty good start, a pretty good journey to have with other individuals, and realizing no matter the color of our skin, what we label ourselves as, a faith, like in religion based, or where we live, we're all human. We're all wanting just better for our, like you said, for, our family. We want for our community. So, I appreciate you, talking about that. We just need to, there, like the overlapping things you mentioned. There's so many things that are overlapping, like do unto others as you do unto you and stuff like that. It's splattered across all texts, but people just need to start practicing it. How many people do you know that sit and are religious or they're spiritual even, and they spew stuff. They stand on that soapbox and they spew stuff, whether it's on social or it's at
Yes.
a local new church that opened up, and they label themselves as divine inter whatever they want to call themselves, and they're up there standing there, they're talking, yet if you open up their book of their life and looked inside of the facade, their actions don't mimic their words. And it's terrible what our society thinks, that they want to tell us what they think we want to hear, but yet they don't do what we need them to do in order for us to actually hear them. Right? To match up that
Yeah.
action and word is so important, right?
Yeah, you got to live it. And if you're living it, you're doing it for yourself first. I think we got to take care of ourselves,
100%.
love ourselves. Yeah, and then
100%.
then we lift up the whole world around us. That's how we change the world. You change the world by changing yourself. And uh if you have a political issue or a social issue or yeah, a spiritual anything, you've got to change yourself, live it, and then you will change the world. We can change the world. Any one of us can, but we got to change ourselves
No,
first.
yeah, I 100% agree. So, and then there's a camp of people that'll think that you're being self-absorbed, or
Yeah, sure.
no, I'm not. If I don't check myself and I don't have a life that's full of intentional living, purposeful
Yeah.
life, and I'm not happy, I'm not making a difference in my family, my community, right? My
Amen.
clients. I'm just
Yeah.
living a shallow existence, a facade. And we just need to realize that betterment is going to happen if you realize it. Like, get to a point, like I remember, um, I'm trying to think of his name, Chicken Soup for the Soul series,
Right.
Jack Canfield. Jack Canfield. I went on to a conference of his, a few years back, and it was a virtual one because of the pandemic. It was like 2, 3 days. And Jack Canfield standing on stage at this event, because they did it on a stage still, even though it was all virtual. And he talked about the fact of little exercises like going to the mirror. And for 1 minute,
Yeah.
looking at yourself in the mirror and talking kind to yourself. What happened good today? So doing some gratefulness, but looking at yourself while you're doing it. And I'd never done that. So I started doing it and it was like, whoa, what a wake up call, John. It was just like, this is uncomfortable. I've done my
Yeah.
gratefulness stuff for years, but I've never done it while looking at myself or acknowledging my weaknesses or what can I do better and what am I going to do tomorrow? And only doing it for like a minute. It was a struggle having to look at, I'd be like, okay, you know what I mean? To a point where I got comfortable and I don't need to do it anymore because I I had that
Yeah.
realization. Some people it might take months, years. I only did it for a few weeks and it was just enough to make me check into myself. So now when I do it, I can see myself, even though I'm not seeing myself, if that makes sense. I can see the inner me without having to see the visual effect of me in order to continue to grow. So my point for bringing that up is people listening, there's little things that we can do to check ourselves in, right? To have that realization, to live that intentionality so that we can truly make a difference. You will see your family life change. You will see your work life change. You'll see everything about your life change as you grow and develop. And you're going to have those camp days. Don't beat yourself up. That's another thing I hear from people. Oh, I did so good. And then this happened in the family or at work. And a few days, next thing I know, that next day came and I stopped. And the next day came, I wasn't doing it. That's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Start again today, right? Just pick it up and start again. Stop going to the gym. You haven't been there in 6 months, 6 years. Pick it up. Maybe it'll make you feel better because your endorphins and the things that you fire up when you work out can make a difference. Change your nutrition. Pick up a good book. Listen to a great podcast that features an awesome person like John, right? Do whatever you need to do to uplift your life because somebody out there that you've never met yet is looking for you,
Yeah.
right? But start with you, right? Don't go try helping others unless you have the actions to prove you've helped yourself,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So John, you speak of this was interesting. I'm really looking forward to this to hear what your thoughts are. You speak of the stream of unconsciousness. What exactly is that? What is your interpretation of the stream of unconsciousness?
So we have all this stuff that we're told that we have to do or can't do or should do, or all this stuff from the time we're children taught by our parents, our teachers, our friends and coworkers and our bosses and our jobs and the government, just all these different tribes of people that we interact with. And then we become that. We become kind of this mix of that. And then that's like this conveyor belt of life that we're put on by society. And I think you call it the hamster wheel often. And I love that because that's the stream of unconsciousness. You're stuck on this conveyor belt, or you're a zombie, you're on the hamster wheel. You're floating down this stream of unconsciousness where you're not aware of, you're doing all this stuff that everyone said that you should or shouldn't do, or had or couldn't do. What do you want? Like, who are you? Like, what are your values? What are your beliefs? What is the stuff that makes up you? That uh and if you're stuck in the stream or of unconscious, you're on the hamster wheel, you can't see that. So you have to take a step back, and it's not hard. The hamster wheel, you just got to sidestep off of it. Or the stream of unconscious, you have to stand up in it. It's not very deep, and then suddenly you can look around. You're like, oh, there's all this colorful, beautiful things. There's uh life slows down. Um, and suddenly you can decide, now you start to understand who you are outside of all of those tribes and influences that you've had since you were literally born. And to me, that's the kind of the essence of the stream of unconsciousness.
I love that. What a beautiful way to state it, though. You got that colorful, beautiful stuff that's all around us. And I've had those awakenings many, many times. I've written about it, I've posted about it. Like last year, this month, I was in Texas for the first time. I went there to be interviewed on a TV show. I was asked by a lady I'd met at a conference, and if I'd fly out and she could interview me. And I said, sure, I'd love to. I've never been to Texas. I know so many people that I've met over the years at different conferences online. And I go to Texas, and one of the days that I wasn't meeting up or connecting with anybody, I went to a place called the Waterways in Woodlands, Texas area, and just beautiful. I sat there. I set up a tripod with my phone, and I was taking pictures and stuff. And one of the pictures I was looking at, I came to the realization when that picture was when I took that picture that I sat there for the longest time just looking around, just looking at the beauty, the wonderment of what the universe has given us, or God has given us, or again, whatever people want to say it is. And just stopping and smelling the roses is pretty much the statement that I would think at that point is. And how many times do we go into beauty and nature and we have all this gorgeous stuff around us, or we walk into a room and there's beautiful, gorgeous people there, in the sense of not just looks, but just people, you hide in the corner, or you're in that environment. I could have gone to the Woodlands and I walked around the waterways. It's just a beautiful, beautiful park with a river going through, and I could have missed it all. But instead I chose to stop and accept what was out there, and actually realize, like, man, are you gonna be in the moment, or are you just gonna always be in a rush to go see the next thing? Oh, okay, I've seen the waterways, let's leave, let's go see something else, right? And I missed that journey and that experience. Wouldn't you say that a lot of people just rush through life, that journey, and they forget to enjoy things? You ask them
Yeah.
about their memories and they don't have any.
That's what it boils down to. I think once you are out of the stream of unconsciousness, then you're suddenly living the present moment. You're alive because we never have anything but today, the present, where we're at right now. We don't have yesterday, we don't have tomorrow. We just have the moment. And if we can learn to appreciate that, uh, and I think sometimes it could take a little bit of work because there's so much noise in the world, But if
Oh, tremendous.
we can filter that noise out and appreciate that, just living where we're at in the moment, it it extends time. It gives us more time. We have all this time, um and it's this beautiful thing, this peaceful thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's a peaceful thing. It's just life is, the worst though is people that have those regrets and they look back and maybe they've got cancer and they're in their 50s or 40s. I've lost so many people to that horrible disease and to other things as well. And their regrets, or they find out and they get diagnosed with something, and then they're trying to rush to fill that lifetime that they missed, smelling the roses and understanding and accepting the journey and creating memories. Now they're trying to compact it in 6 months before they pass away, or whatever the case may be. Those listening, watching, start that one moment. Like, honestly, life of regrets really, really is not something anybody deserves. But sometimes we choose it. We may not deserve it, but we choose it because of our actions and lack of, and it goes back to that, stream of unconscious, and that learned behavior that has been conditioned. And that's not just learned behavior from family, society in general,
Yeah.
right? The associations of what's on television, movies, right? Somebody's sad and depressed, they watch sad, depressing, or listen to depressing crap, right? They watch drama-filled television shows and don't, and they were on the cooler talking about it at work the next day. Can you believe what this person did that? And on that, it's an escapism because they hate their own reality. So they're living through the reality of, and society loves that you do that, because what does it do? It sells commercialism through advertising, right?
Right.
It's a big
Yeah.
machine. It's a big machine.
Yeah, Madison Avenue is probably the most underrated aspect of our lives, actually.
Absolutely. So, we talked about all this stuff and the stream of unconsciousness. I'd like to understand, though, and then, I read about this. You had it on part of one of your things that I read. I can't remember which part, but, how do you navigate that spiritual path in the modern age? So obviously with your spiritual community that you created over the last 2 years, that is absolutely something that can help people navigate the spiritual path in the modern age. Is there anything else that you would recommend people could utilize to navigate through, the spiritual path and the crazy age we have today?
I think the first thing people have to realize is most of us aren't ever going to be a monk living in the Himalayas, in a monastery. So that's the first step, right? And then
Uh,
once once you realize that, suddenly we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to live in the real world. I can be the spiritual being, what religious, spiritual, whatever. I can have my beliefs, my philosophies, and I can interact with the real world in this meaningful way in my day to day. I have to go eat, I have to go sleep, I have to go work, I have to have the relationships, but I can do that in a way where it's married and aligned with what my spiritual philosophies are, what my values are, what my beliefs are. We can we have to, and we talked about it, that noise. We filter that noise. There's the external noise of our digital devices, our computers, our streaming services, all of that. Then there's the internal noise of our mind and ego. And our mind and ego are awesome. They keep us alive. But they've been doing that for thousands of years. And we're pretty safe these days, a lot of us. And so they overperform. And you got to recognize that your internal monologue, it's going to give you these racing thoughts. So you got to quiet the outside noise and you kind of quiet the inside noise. And then you can marry those philosophies and spirituality and beliefs with your day-to-day everyday life. And that's I think what spirituality to me is kind of all about, is how do you make that happen?
yeah, and I know with so many people, in order to enact that calmness as you talk about in your thought process, because it's racing, and we don't necessarily need that same level that we needed hundreds of years ago,
Right.
decades ago, right? Because we've, like you said, we're living a pretty safe life. People look at, meditation. They look at breath work. They look at all these different modalities and I've had people on my show that talk about it, and I'm not just counting any of them. My point is whatever works for you, find it, stick to
Yes.
it, stick to it. You need to
Yes.
find
And
something and don't quit.
that, I love that you say that, because and I wish everybody out there would really pay attention to this even more so than the rest of it. Like, what will you do? You can do a lot of things. You can do almost anything. What will you do? And if you'll do it, then you'll be successful. So find something that you will do. You can meditate any way you want. You can do breathing work anyway. There's all this stuff you can do anyway. So what will you do? Like, and then when it comes to personal development and change and kind of living a more joyous, peaceful existence, what will you do to kind of accomplish that?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. What will you do? It is that simple. What are you willing to do? There's never been success, and this people always think success is money. I'm talking there's life success, emotional, mental
Yeah.
success without stepping outside. You're going to hear me say it till the day I take my last breath. You won't have life success, great memories in a journey that you're going to be proud of without getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
And whatever
absolutely.
modality or whatever you pick, whether it's reaching out to John and checking out his community, whether you get into breath work along with John's, because you can have more than one thing too. You can have more than one thing that helps you check
That's
the
right.
boxes to make you be checked into life.
Yes. Yeah, all of that.
Exactly. So, John, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
When you're doing this, don't chase perfection. There might be perfection inside of us, that divine thing inside of us, but in this real world that we're moving through together, don't try to be perfect. Just be good, be great, but don't try to be perfect, and love yourself. Always love yourself.
Great last message. I appreciate that, brother. So our time is almost up, and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way they can reach you?
Our main site is kishar.org, KISHAR.org, and that's the entrance to our community and our guidance and coaching one-on-one stuff. And it has links to our socials and our YouTube channel, which is pretty cool. So they can find us there.
Fantastic. And those listening that are new to the show, Go to giveaheck.com, hit the podcast tab at the top, and you'll see John's face. And below that will have the information on how to reach out and reminder of the website link. And you'll be able to reach out to John and start. Maybe this will be your first baby step, or maybe you've been taking some and you're kind of warbling where you want to go on your journey. Check it out. It's always good to give yourself, your mind is a giant computer. It needs new data input. Give yourself that, pat on the back and check out John and what he offers. It might be just what you've been waiting for. So John, anything last you'd like to add?
Again, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I really love the message you're putting out in the world. And I think it's great that there's people like you trying to help people out. And for everyone out there, just take advantage of it, because it's possible. Anything's possible.
I appreciate that, brother. And for those of you that are listening, if you could do me a favor, go and rate my podcast. Share it with others as well. The reason I ask you to rate and put a comment in regards to the podcast or whatever platform you are on is because it helps it get out to more people. The software that distributes and makes sure people are aware of it, appreciate people putting comments and make sure more people get to see it. And I'd really appreciate that. And share it with your family and friends if you've gotten value from this podcast or any of the podcasts. I'd be eternally grateful. And that person you help get connected with me might be eternally grateful to you as well, because they might hear a fantastic guest like John that can make a difference in their world. So again, thanks so much for being on Give a Heck. John, I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.